The coffin arrived a little before 11 on a Tuesday morning, which was bad timing in a house where all timing was either sacred or suspect. Fritz had just informed me that lunch would involve duck with a sauce. He spoke of the way bishops mention Revelation, and I was at my desk in the front room sorting a batch of letters that had no business existing. Nero Wolfe was upstairs in the plant rooms, where he devoted the hours from 9 to 11 to his orchids with a fidelity he had never shown to clients, governments, or the ordinary decencies of social movement. The bell rang. I crossed the hall, opened the front door, and found two men on the stoop in grey coveralls, each with the expression of someone doing a job he preferred not to explain. Behind them, backed up to the curb, stood a delivery truck with the name Hollis Funeral Appointments painted on the side in gold letters that had once aimed at dignity and now suggested a bargain. "One for Mr. Archie Goodwin," the larger of the two said, consulting a clipboard. "You've got him," I said, "unless this is contagious." He didn't smile. "Need a signature?" I took the clipboard, glanced at the slip, and saw my name typed in clean capitals. No return name, no message, just one item received for delivery, paid in full. "What item?" I asked. He looked past me into the hall as if measuring angles. "Coffin." There are times in my life when I have said exactly the right thing, but this wasn't one of them. I signed, handed the clipboard back, and said, "You boys had better not scratch the woodwork." That got a flicker from the smaller man. As they went to the truck and came back carrying a coffin between them, not cheap pine and not deluxe satin catastrophe either, but a respectable dark walnut with brass handles and the quiet finish of something meant to be seen in a room where people kept their voices low. It was closed. I stepped aside and let them bring it into the hall. They had to angle it past the hat rack. I was deciding whether I preferred outrage or curiosity when the door from the dining room swung open and Fritz Brenner stood there, took one look and said, "No." It was the kind of no that could have halted cavalry. "Not for lunch?" I told him. "It is not for anything," Fritz said. "This house is not a warehouse for the dead." I am relieved to hear it. As far as I know, it's for me. His eyes widened, which for Fritz counted as public disorder. "Mr. R. Goodwin." The delivery men set the coffin down in the hall. The bigger one handed me an envelope. This was attached. Then they left, and I shut the door on the truck, the curb, and a city that had suddenly improved its sense of humor at my expense. Fritz was still staring at the coffin as if it might hatch. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single card, creamstock, expensive, with 6 words typed in the middle. For the man already inside it. No signature, no flourish, no perfume, lipstick, thumbprint, or other amateur embroidery. Just that. "Well," I said, "that narrows it to everyone." Fritz made a noise in his throat. "You will take it out?" "Yes," I said. "At once. Possibly after I look inside and make sure I'm not doubling up." That stopped him. Inside, it would be careless not to. I bent, found the latch, and raised the lid. Fritz took one step back. I looked in. The coffin was empty except for a folded sheet of paper resting on the white satin lining. I took it out, unfolded it, and read 3 typed lines. "You ask questions for a living. Ask the one that matters. Who wants you buried before Friday?" That was all. No signature again. Whoever had planned it had either self-control or professional guidance, and I don't like either in an enemy. From the stairs came a voice as dry as old parchment. "Archie, close the lid. You are letting the hall fill with morbidity." Nero Wolfe had descended without my hearing him, which meant I had been more interested than I liked to admit. He stood on the lower step, 7/10 of a ton of genius and grievance in a yellow shirt, looking from me to the coffin with the disfavor he usually reserved for municipal reformers. "Good morning," I said. "You've missed the delivery man, but not the merchandise." "I have eyes." "Yes, sir. They're having a busy day." He extended a hand. I gave him the card and the note. He read both, his lips tightening only enough for me to notice because I was trained in those small earthquakes. "Play," he said. That, from Wolfe, could mean anything from mild annoyance to a declaration of war. Fritz found his voice. "Mr. Wolfe, it must be removed." "Certainly," Wolfe said. "But not until Mr. Goodwin has learned why it was sent." That was one reason I worked for him. Another was that no matter what came through the front door, murder, blackmail, counterfeit orchids, hysterical heiresses, district attorneys, Wolfe never wasted energy being surprised. He merely arranged the event inside his private scale of nuisance and importance. Thus this one, I could tell, had scored higher than nuisance. He turned to me. "Who knew you would be here at this hour?" "Everyone with a calendar and a grudge. Be less lyrical. Clients, ex-clients, people I've interviewed, people I've trapped into statements, 1 or 2 women whose judgment I respect because they no longer speak to me, and 6 men who would send me a coffin if they thought they could afford brass handles." Wolfe grunted. "The reference to Friday is operative. Something is to occur by then. Or to me." "Yes, you're included in the something." He looked again at the note. "The sender wants attention, but not publicity. Expense without display, menace without vulgarity. It is not the act of a fool." I said, "That excludes a comfortingly large portion of the population." He ignored it. "Open your notebook." "Aye, we will proceed." I got it. Fritz was still planted near the dining room door, offended in his bones. "First," Wolfe said, "the funeral establishment. Obviously." "No, not obviously. Methodically. Who ordered it, by what means, when paid, and whether the voice was male or female if by telephone, or what manner if in person. Second, the typewriter." I looked at the note. "You think we'll identify a machine from 3 lines?" "No, I think we may identify habits. Third, every case in the past 6 weeks in which your conduct caused acute resentment with a terminal flavor. That shortens my social list." "Good. It should. I will examine the wording again after lunch. Assuming Fritz permits lunch in a house contaminated by satin." Fritz drew himself up. "Lunch will be served because civilization must defend itself." Wolfe nodded once, and as if that settled the matter not only for West 35th Street, but for Rome and Carthage. Then he moved toward the office. At the door he stopped and turned his head. "Archie." "Yes, sir. If anyone intends to bury you before Friday, I prefer to know his reason by Thursday afternoon. Friday is inconvenient." That was all, but it was enough. The game had started, and in our line of work, the first move that looked theatrical was usually covering one that was not. I closed the coffin lid gently, because there was no point insulting good walnut, and went to the phone to call Hollis funeral appointments before the trail cooled and before somebody decided a coffin was only the beginning. Hollis funeral appointments answered on the 3rd ring with the breathy solemnity funeral people use to suggest they are on intimate terms with eternity and can fit you in at 2:30. I asked for the manager, got him after a wait of 20 seconds, and introduced myself in a tone that discouraged condolences. His name was Emery Vale. He had a dry, professional voice and the kind of caution men acquire when their daily business depends on not making errors around grieving relatives. When I told him one of his coffins had been delivered to my employer's house that morning addressed to me, the caution sharpened into alarm. "We fill many orders, Mr. Goodwin," he said. "If there has been a mistake, I assure you." "There has been a delivery," I said. "Whether there has been a mistake depends on what kind of establishment you're running, and I want the details on the order." I couldn't possibly disclose client information. You can if the client used your firm to send a threat into a private residence, or you can wait until I invite a police lieutenant with a temper to ask in person. He took half a breath. "1 moment." He came back in under a minute, which meant he either had the invoice at hand or had decided I sounded like trouble. He said the order had been placed yesterday afternoon by telephone. Male voice. Controlled, middle range. No accent he could identify. The caller had specified a closed walnut coffin, standard lining, immediate delivery at 10:30 to 11 the next morning, and had paid by messenger within the hour with cash in an envelope. No name, no card from the house. The envelope had contained the delivery address typed on a slip, my name included. The messenger? I asked. Young man, cap pulled low. I did not see him personally. My bookkeeper received it. Description. White, perhaps. Medium height. Dark coat. I'm sorry, Mr. Goodwin, but it was raining. It hadn't been raining. That told me something. It told me Emery Vale was either nervous enough to invent weather or practiced enough to offer harmless fog when facts ran thin. Your bookkeeper available? A pause. He has gone to lunch. At 11:15? Another pause, shorter this time. He stepped out. Tell him not to take the train to Buffalo. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and went to the office. Wolfe was at his desk, his eyes closed, fingertips together, the note and card placed square before him as though they were evidence in a case and sacramental objects in a distasteful religion. But he opened his eyes when I entered. Well? I gave him Hollis in order, including the imaginary rain. Good, Wolfe said. Good. The undertaker is slippery. Yes, but only where he is uncertain. A liar who adds weather is not a proficient liar. Either the bookkeeper exists and saw more than Vale wishes reported, or Vale himself took the cash and wants distance from it. Go. I had planned to. Take the note and card to Ori Cather after lunch. He may know the machine type, and call Saul Panzer at 1. Not sooner. He dislikes being interrupted during his lunch almost as much as I do during mine. I turned to go. Archie. Yes? If the sender wished merely to frighten you, he succeeded in being elaborate. Elaborate gestures are investments. The return expected is specific. That cheers me. It should instruct you, not cheer you. In the hall, I found Fritz supervising the removal of the coffin to the front room as though it were contaminated artillery. He informed me lunch would be in 10 minutes, and that if I intended to bring police, reporters, or morticians into the house again, he required warning enough to defend the table linen. I told him I would issue a bulletin. After lunch, I took the sedan downtown. Hollis Funeral Appointments occupied a narrow building with frosted windows, bronze lettering, and a vestibule that smelled of lilies, furniture polish, and quiet profit. Emery Vale met me in the front office. He was thin, careful, and dressed in black, so correct it looked rehearsed. I resent your tone on the telephone, he said. Try mine in person. His lips thinned. But he took me to a back office where a balding man with sleeve garters sat at a desk checking invoices. This was the bookkeeper, Lester Pipp. He looked up at me, then at Vale, then back at me. That triangle told me who in the room was afraid. You took the payment? I asked. Pipp nodded. Describe the messenger. He glanced at Vale. I waited. Silence can be more persuasive than threats if you wear it properly. He was young, Pipp said finally. 25, maybe. Light overcoat, brown hat, clean-shaven. He had gloves. Color? Tan. Face? Ordinary. That's useful if I'm shopping for one. Height? 5'10", maybe. And the envelope? Plain, cash inside, $50 bills. Did he say anything? Only that the order had to be delivered exactly as typed, and he asked for a receipt and waited while I wrote it. Did he sign for it? No. Did you keep the receipt stub? Yes. I held out my hand. He looked at Vale again. Vale said, Show him. Pipp opened a drawer and passed over a carbon receipt. Cash received, amount noted, no payer named. But below the amount, in pencil, probably added by habit, were 3 letters. BMC. What's this? I asked. Pip blinked. Sometimes I mark the source if there's a messenger route, for my own balancing. BMC means? He swallowed. Black Marlow Courier. Vale turned on him. Why was I not told that? Pip looked miserable. You didn't ask. I nearly smiled. A lot of truth arrives that way. Address? I asked. Pip gave me one on East 47th, a small courier service. Maybe real, maybe a mailbox with ambition. I handed the stub back. One more thing, the typed slip with my address. You still have it? Vale said no too quickly. Pip said, I think so, and got it from a file. It was a narrow strip of white paper with my name and the brownstone address typed in elite type, slightly worn on the lowercase o. I took out the note from the coffin. Same elite face, same tired o. That didn't solve anything, but it married two pieces that had arrived pretending to be strangers. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the afternoon had gone bright and brittle. I stood for a moment looking at traffic, the typed slip in one pocket and the copy of the receipt in the other, and got the agreeable sensation that the coffin had stopped being a stunt and had begun behaving like evidence. That was when I noticed the man across the street in the tobacco shop doorway, not wearing a tan hat and watching me with the fixed patience of someone waiting to see where I would go next. I didn't look at him twice. Men who want you to notice them usually arrange it so you don't have to try, and men who don't want you to notice them don't stand in doorways wearing tan hats and patience. That left a third category, which I've met often enough to know it deserves attention and nothing more. I turned right instead of left and walked half a block, then stopped at a newsstand and bought a paper I didn't intend to read. The glass of the stand gave me a slant view across the street. The man hadn't moved, but his head had shifted just enough to keep me in his line. He was 5'10" or thereabouts, clean-shaven, with a face that would have been ordinary if it hadn't been so carefully neutral. His coat was light, his gloves tan. And it could have been a coincidence, but coincidences don't usually wear the same shade twice in one day. I folded the paper, tucked it under my arm, and kept walking. At the corner, I crossed against the light, cut back along the next street, and came up behind the tobacco shop through a narrow alley that smelled like a bad decision. I stepped out, paused long enough to tie a shoelace I didn't need tied, and then looked. The doorway was empty. That didn't surprise me. What did was the movement at the end of the block, a flash of tan, a shoulder turning into a side street. I went after it, not running, because running turns a possibility into a certainty. By the time I reached the corner, he was gone again, but a woman selling fruit told me, without being asked, that a man had just taken a cab. Which way? I said. She pointed uptown. I thanked her, tipped my hat, and decided not to chase taxis on speculation. If he wanted me to know he existed, he had accomplished it. If he wanted me to follow him, I had declined the invitation. Either way, it put one more stone on Wolfe's scale under elaborate. I went back to the car and drove to East 47th. Black Marlow Courier occupied the second floor of a building that had been respectable before it decided to economize. The name was on the glass in black letters that tried for authority and settled for legibility. Inside, a narrow office held a desk, 2 chairs, and a girl with a pencil behind her ear who looked up as I came in. Yes, she said. I'm here about a delivery made yesterday, I said. Cash, envelope, no name. The messenger would have been one of yours. We make many deliveries, she said. She was young, incompetent, and not impressed by men with questions. Try this one. It involved a coffin. That got a flicker. Not much, but enough to tell me the word had weight. Just a moment, she said, and went through a door. A man came out who had learned to be genial because it helped him stay in business. He had a round face, thinning hair, and a tie that had surrendered to its own history. He introduced himself as Marlowe, which I doubted but didn't challenge. I gave him the outline. He listened, nodding in the right places. "We do occasional cash runs," he said. "We don't ask questions beyond the address and the fee, but we keep logs." "I admire a man who keeps logs," I said. "Show me." He hesitated, then went to a cabinet and brought out a ledger. Yesterday's entries were neat, time-stamped, with initials for the messenger assigned. The run to Hollis' funeral appointments was there. Pick-up at 3:20, delivery at 3:50, fee paid, messenger initials RK. "Who's RK?" I asked. "Ralph Kittering," Marlowe said. "Good man, reliable." "Where is he now?" "On a run." "Bring him back." Marlowe spread his hands. "I can't recall him in the middle of a job." "Try," I said. He studied me for a second, then went to the phone and made a call. He spoke quietly, listened, and hung up. "He'll be here in 20 minutes, he said. I took a chair. Waiting is an art in our business, and I've had practice. While I waited, I looked at the ledger again. RK had made 6 runs that day, all within a tight grid of streets. No outliers, no long trips, nothing that suggested improvisation. Either he was what Marlowe said, a reliable man who did what he was told, or he was good enough to look like one. Ralph Kittering arrived in 18 minutes. He was younger than I expected, with clear eyes and a face that hadn't yet learned to lie without showing it. He took one look at me, then at Marlowe, and I saw the first ripple of uncertainty. "You made a pickup yesterday afternoon for Hollis' funeral appointments," I said. "Cash in an envelope." "Yes, sir," he said. "From whom?" "A man." "That narrows it to a majority." "Describe him." "Tall, taller than me. Maybe 6 feet, dark suit, gray hat. He met me on the corner of 43rd and Lexington. He gave me the envelope and the address. Said it was important to deliver within the hour." "Did he give a name?" "No, sir." "Accent?" "No, sir." "Face?" Kittering frowned. He had glasses. "Those thin frames. He kept them on even though it wasn't bright." "Anything else?" "He had a ring. Signet, I think. Dark stone." "Which hand?" "Right." That was something. Not much, but something. I asked him to show me exactly where on the corner he had met the man. He did, marking it on a city map with a pencil. I had him repeat the description twice more, changing the order of the questions. He didn't vary. Either he was telling the truth or he had memorized it well. "Did he say anything else?" I asked. Kittering hesitated. He said, "No mistakes." "Did you make any?" "No, sir." "Good," I said, "because if you had, I'd be attending my own funeral." He blinked, not sure if I was joking. I left him to his uncertainty and went downstairs. Back in the car, I sat for a moment with the engine off, letting the pieces settle. And a man with a grey hat and a signet ring, careful enough to pay cash through a courier, deliberate enough to choose a coffin and a line that would get my attention, and bold enough to have someone watch me leave the undertaker. The reference to Friday still sat in the middle of it like a pin holding a map. I started the engine and headed back toward the brownstone. There were calls to make. Ori for the type, Saul for the man with the ring, and Wolfe for the pleasure of telling him that whoever wanted me buried had begun by introducing himself in installments. As I turned onto 35th, I saw a car idling across the street from the house and through the windshield just for a second, the glint of thin-framed glasses catching the afternoon light. I didn't slow down. Slowing down is a form of waving, and I wasn't ready to wave. And I drove past the brownstone, checked the rearview mirror, and saw the idling car in clearer profile. Dark sedan, nothing distinctive except that it had chosen a good place to be invisible and had failed by a narrow margin. The man behind the wheel didn't turn his head. He didn't have to. If he was the same one Kittering had described, he had already seen enough of me to know what he wanted. At the corner, I made a right, then another, and came back on the block from the opposite end. The sedan was still there. That told me something else. Patience or orders. I parked 2 doors down, got out, and walked toward my own front door as if the street had never been invented. When I reached the steps, I turned, not abruptly, just enough to light a cigarette I didn't need, and let my eyes drift. The man in the sedan was looking straight ahead, through thin-framed glasses, catching light again. Grey hat on the seat beside him. I went inside. The hall still held the faint suggestion of polish and something else, as if the presence of the coffin had left a memory that didn't want to move out. Fritz appeared from the dining room, saw my face, and decided against asking questions that might interfere with dinner later. "In the office," he said. "Mr. Wolfe is waiting." That was as close as Fritz came to admitting that something had entered his domain and he had accepted it under protest. Wolfe was at his desk, exactly as I had left him, except that the note and card had been joined by a magnifying glass and a sheet of paper on which he had written 2 lines in his careful hand. He did not look up when I entered. "Report," he said. I gave him Hollis, Pip, the BMC initials, Marlowe's ledger, and Kittering's description. I added the man in the tobacco shop doorway, the tan gloves, the alley, the cab, and finally the sedan across the street with the glasses catching light. Wolfe listened with his eyes closed, which meant he was seeing more than I was saying. When I finished, he opened them and took a breath. "Good," he said again. "You have a generous definition of that word. I have a precise one. We have movement, expenditure, and a sequence. The sender is neither impulsive nor economical. He uses intermediaries, but permits a controlled exposure. He wishes you to know you are observed. He's succeeding. Yes, he also wishes you to believe that the coffin is the primary gesture. It is not. I'd suspected as much." "Friday," Wolfe said. "What occurs by Friday?" "Something to me, Auntie, according to the note. Or something that involves you, which is not identical. List the cases." I sat and opened my notebook. "Last 6 weeks, we have the Dalrymple jewelry theft, which ended with the husband paying his wife's insurance claim out of his own pocket and calling it charity. The Henshaw embezzlement, which made an assistant cashier very unhappy with me. The Greeley import licenses, which involved a man named Baird who lost a shipment and blamed me for noticing it. The Calder blackmail business, where a woman named Mavis Calder paid to keep letters out of court and then decided she would rather not have paid. And the Weiss partnership dispute, which cost 2 men their friendship and one of them a considerable sum." "Names," Wolfe said. I gave them. He wrote each one with the same care. It's as if he were planting seeds and expected something to grow. "Which of these," he asked, "involved a man who would wear a signet ring on the right hand and consider a coffin an appropriate instrument?" "That leaves out the assistant cashier," I said. "He wore desperation and nothing else. Baird might fit, but he's more likely to send a lawyer. Dalrymple has rings, but he prefers to use them to sign checks. Weiss wears one, but it's on the left. That leaves Mavis Calder's correspondent, who never showed his face, and anyone we didn't identify at the time." "Ah," Wolfe said, "the unobserved participant, always fertile ground." I leaned back. "There's more. The courier pickup was at 43rd and Lexington. That corner has 3 offices with typewriters that might match the elite face with a worn O, and a dozen that might not. We can canvass." "We will not canvass," Wolfe said. "We will think. You will, however, take the note and the slip to Ori Cather. He has an affection for type that borders on pathology. He may recognize a habit." "I'll call him." "And Saul Panzer at 1. "It's past 1. Wolfe looked at the clock. "Then call him now and apologize for our failure to respect his digestion. He will forgive us if we offer him a suitable fee." I got to the phone. Saul answered on the second ring, his voice flat with the remnants of a sandwich. "Yes." "It's me. Wolfe wants you. Wolfe always wants me. He has a reason this time. Better be good." Coffin delivered to my house this morning, addressed to me. Cash through a courier, man with thin glasses, signet ring, and a taste for timing. We want him before Friday. There was a pause. Then, I'll be there in 20. I hung up and turned back to Wolfe. He'll come. Of course he will, Wolfe said. Money is a persuasive philosophy. He picked up the note again, held it to the light, and studied the impression of the keys as if the paper might confess under scrutiny. Ask the one that matters, he murmured. A vulgar exhortation, but not without merit. What is the one that matters, Archie? Who wants me buried before Friday? I said. No, Wolfe said. Why? I let that sit. It had more weight than the coffin. From the street came the faint sound of an engine turning over. I crossed to the window and moved the curtain a fraction. The sedan was pulling away from the curb, smooth, unhurried, as if it had completed its errand and had no further interest in the block. As it passed under the light, I saw the profile of the driver for a second. Glasses, yes, and something else I couldn't name because it was gone too quickly. I let the curtain fall. He's leaving, I said. Good, Wolfe said. He has seen enough for now. So have we. The next move will be ours. Saul Panzer arrived in 18 minutes, which meant he had either skipped dessert or decided the situation justified it. He came into the office without ceremony, nodded once at Wolfe, and looked at me as if checking whether I'd already been buried and failed to mention it. You look alive, he said. I make a point of it, I told him. Sit down. We've got a man who wants to improve my condition. Saul took a chair, crossed one leg over the other, and waited. That was Saul. He didn't ask for summaries. He absorbed them. Wolfe gestured. Mr. Goodwin will repeat his account, since you will then ask questions he has not considered. I ran through it again, tighter this time. Coffin, note, Hollis, Pip, BMC, Kittering, the man with the glasses, the sedan outside. Saul listened without moving except for his eyes, which shifted once when I mentioned the signet ring. When I finished, he said, Right hand. Yes. Unusual, he said. Most men wear them on the left. Old families sometimes use the right for display. Businessmen sometimes use it to sign with. Depends on the habit. Find me the habit, Wolfe said. Saul nodded. I'll start with the corner, 43rd and Lexington. I want to know who uses it regularly for meets. There are coffee shops, an office building with a lobby that sees traffic, and a newsstand that hears more than it prints. I'll also check with Black Marlowe's other clients. And if your man uses couriers often, he may have left a trail of cash and caution. Do not be seen, Wolfe said. I never am, Saul said without vanity. He got up and left, and I felt better. When Saul takes a case, the city loses a place to hide in. I took the note and the typed slip and went to see Ori Cather. He had an office on Madison that he used when it suited him and ignored when it didn't. Today, it suited him. He was there, coat off, sleeves rolled, a cigarette burning in an ashtray as if it had been thinking for him. What have you got? He said. I handed him the paper. He looked at it the way a doctor looks at an X-ray he suspects of lying. He held it up, turned it, ran a finger lightly over the surface. Elite type, he said. Old machine. The O is worn on the right side. Not uncommon. But look here. He pointed to the spacing between the lines. Slight irregularity. The second line sits a hair higher than it should. That suggests a platen that's been adjusted by someone who doesn't trust factory settings. That narrows it to people with hands, I said. He smiled thinly. And habits. Machines are like dogs. They learn from their owners. This one has a habit of impatience. See the pressure on the capitals. Heavy. Whoever typed this strikes hard, especially on the first letter of a line. Angry. Controlled, Ori said. Angry men don't control pressure. They spill it. This is deliberate emphasis. Also, no corrections, no hesitations. The lines were composed before they were typed. Professional. Or someone who wants to appear so. I've seen worse disguises. I gave him the slip from Hollis. He compared the two. Same machine, he said. Same worn O, same pressure. The slip is more hurried. The address is correct, but the spacing is tighter. He was either in a hurry or writing from memory. Can you trace the machine? Ori shook his head. Not without a sample library, and even then it's a game of chances. But if you bring me more from the same source, I can tell you if it's the same hand or a copy. I took the papers back. You've been helpful. I try, he said. Who's dead? Not me, I said, and left before he could improve his odds. Back at the brownstone, the afternoon had settled into that quiet that isn't peaceful so much as waiting for something to disturb it. Fritz informed me that coffee would be served in the office because he had decided proximity to the problem might prevent it from contaminating the dining room further, and I accepted on behalf of civilization. Wolfe was where he had been, but the sheet of paper before him had acquired more names. He looked at me. Well, I told him Ori's conclusions. He listened, then nodded once. Deliberate, he said. He wishes to be read. That is vanity, and vanity is a lever. Assuming we can find where to place it. We will. Saul will assist. Meanwhile, we will consider the list. He read off the names I had given him earlier, then added two more. One was a man I'd forgotten. A broker named Leland Bryce, who had tried to involve us in a scheme that collapsed when I asked the wrong question. The other was new to me. Victor Runn, Wolfe said. Who's he? A man who called here 3 weeks ago requesting my services. I declined. Reason? He would not state his problem with sufficient clarity, and he objected to my fee with insufficient humility. He mentioned you by name. That's flattering. He said you had interfered in a matter that cost him money. Did he say which matter? No. He said you would know. I considered it. I don't. That doesn't mean much. Indeed, Wolfe said. It means we must discover it. The phone rang. I picked it up. Saul's voice came through, flat as before, but with something under it. I've got a name, he said. Maybe. Man with glasses. Thin frames. Seen at the corner twice this week. He meets people. Doesn't stay long. Pays cash. One of the coffee boys says he called him Mr. Raine when he left. I looked at Wolfe. He was already looking at me. Victor Raine, I said into the phone. That's what I thought, Saul said. I'm on him. And don't go out without telling me where. I'll send you a postcard, I said, and hung up. Wolfe closed his eyes again, but this time there was a faint tightening at the corners. So, he said, Mr. Raine introduces himself. Through a coffin, I said. Through a series of gestures, Wolfe corrected. The coffin is merely the most theatrical. The observation is more interesting. He wishes to see how you react. He'll be disappointed, I said. I plan to react intelligently. See that you do, Wolfe said, and do not die before Friday. It would be inconvenient for my schedule. I leaned back, lit a cigarette, and watched the smoke find its way to the ceiling. Somewhere in the city, a man named Victor Raine had decided that burying me was a useful objective. He had invested in wood, brass, and a certain amount of imagination. Now he had added his name to the ledger, and that made it a different game. Names have a way of pulling threads together, and I had the agreeable feeling that if I tugged hard enough, something would unravel before Friday, and not the thing he had in mind. Saul called again before I had finished my cigarette, which meant he had something more than a name. I picked up on the second ring. He's not hiding, Saul said. That's interesting. Interesting usually costs extra, I told him. Where is he? Moving. He left the corner, walked east, took a cab to 61st, got out, Went into a building with a dentist on the first floor and offices above. Stayed 12 minutes. Came out with an envelope. Then he walked to Lexington and got another cab. I'm following. Description the same. Same glasses, same hat, and same habit of not looking where he doesn't need to. He knows how to be watched. Or he wants to be, I said. Maybe, Saul said. I'll call again. I hung up and turned to Wolfe. He had not moved, but there was a slight shift in the air around him, the way there is before a storm decides to commit. He is conducting business, Wolfe said. Efficiently, I agreed. 12 minutes for a pickup. Or a drop, Wolfe said. Do not assume direction without evidence. I never do, I said, which was close enough to the truth for office work. The phone rang again 10 minutes later. Saul didn't waste time. He's headed downtown, he said. Just got out on 29th. Going into a building with a sign that says Calder and Associates. That stopped me. I looked at Wolfe. His eyes opened. Mavis Calder, he said. Her office, I said into the phone. Looks like it, Saul said. Want me inside? No, Wolfe said, loud enough for the phone to carry it. Wait. Observe who enters and leaves. Mr. Goodwin will go. Saul grunted. Right, and hung up. I took my coat. You think he's visiting her? I think he is visiting someone who will be connected to her, Wolfe said. The Calder matter was unsatisfactory. You said so yourself. I said she paid and regretted it. Regret is a fertile motive, Wolfe said. Go. Do not announce yourself unless it is useful, and Archie, yes. If Mr. Rene is there, do not engage him prematurely. We will prefer him unalarmed. I'll be discreet, I said. That would be novel, Wolfe said, and closed his eyes. Calder and Associates occupied the third floor of a building that had once pretended to be respectable and now settled for being adequate. Now the directory listed Mavis Calder, Confidential Services, which was a polite way of saying she arranged for problems to disappear without attracting official attention. I'd met her once, and she had met me twice, once as a client, once as an adversary. Neither had improved her opinion of me. I took the stairs. The door at the top was ajar. Inside, a reception area held a desk, 2 chairs, and a young man with a pencil who looked up as I came in and decided I was either trouble or business. He chose business. Yes? I'm here to see Miss Calder, I said. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, but she has a memory. He hesitated, then went through an inner door. Voices murmured. The door opened again, and Mavis Calder stood there, composed, elegant, and displeased to see me in a way that suggested she had expected someone else. Mr. Goodwin, she said, this is unexpected. I have that effect, I said. May I come in? She considered, then stepped aside. I went into her office. It was neat, efficient, and designed to suggest that secrets were handled with care. There was a faint scent of something expensive that didn't belong to flowers. What brings you here? She asked. A man, I said. Tall, glasses, thin frames. He was seen entering this building a few minutes ago. Her expression didn't change enough to satisfy me. We have many clients. Of course you do. This one might be named Victor Rahn. That got a flicker. Not much, but it was there. I don't discuss clients, she said. I don't ask about them unless they send coffins to my house, I said. This one did. She drew a breath, then let it out slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. That's unfortunate, I said. Because if you do know him, and he's using your office as a convenience, you may be closer to my funeral than you like. She held my gaze. You're being melodramatic. I had a coffin delivered this morning, I said. I'm entitled. She turned away, walked to her desk, and touched a paper as if to remind herself where she was. When she turned back, the composure was back in place, but it had been assembled with more effort. "He came," she said. "He asked a question. I declined to answer it." "What question?" "Whether I could arrange for information to be obtained without notice." "That's your line," I said. "Not in the way he meant," she said. "He wanted access to records that are not accessible." "Which records?" She shook her head. "No." I let that sit. Yeah, then I said, "Did he leave anything?" She hesitated. That was enough. "An envelope," she said finally. "For a third party." "Who?" "I don't know. He said it would be collected." "By whom?" "He didn't say." "Where is it?" "In the safe." "Show me." "No," she said. I took a step closer. "Mavis, this is not a negotiation. If that envelope is part of the same pattern as the coffin, it concerns me directly. If you hold it, you're holding something that may be used to make good on a promise I don't intend to keep." She looked at me, measured something, and then made a decision. She went to a small safe behind a painting, opened it, and took out a plain envelope. No markings, no address. "He said it would be collected at 4, she said, "by someone who would give a name." "What name?" "He didn't say." "Convenient," I said. "May I?" She held the envelope tighter. "No," I smiled. "Then we'll wait together." Her eyes narrowed. "You can't stay here." "I can stay anywhere I like," I said. "But I prefer here, because I have the feeling that at 4 o'clock something is going to walk through that door, and I would rather be present when it does." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Very well." I checked my watch. It was 3:25. 35 minutes to wait, in a room where the air had decided to be careful. I took a chair, lit a cigarette, and watched the door. At 3:49, footsteps sounded in the outer office. The young man's voice, then another voice, low, controlled. The door opened, and a man stepped in. Tall, grey hat, thin-framed glasses catching the light. Victor Rane looked at me, and for the first time that day he smiled. He didn't stop when he saw me. That was the first thing I liked about him. Men who stop have already decided they're surprised. He came in, closed the door behind him, and took 2 steps into the room before removing his gloves with a neatness that suggested he preferred control to speed. "Miss Calder," he said, inclining his head just enough to acknowledge her without granting her authority. Then his eyes returned to me. "Mr. Goodwin, this is efficient." "I try to be where I'm expected," I said. "It saves time." His smile stayed in place, but it shifted slightly at the corners, as if it had adjusted to a new fact. "You were expected," he said. "Not here, perhaps, but in the sequence." "I like being in the sequence," I said. "It makes me feel included." He moved to a chair without asking and sat down, placing his hat on the desk with the same care he had used on his gloves. The glasses caught the light again, and I saw that the frames were thinner than I'd thought, almost delicate, the kind a man chooses when he doesn't want his vision to be noticed. "Miss Calder," he said, "the envelope." She held it, not moving. "There has been a complication," she said. "So I see," he said, glancing at me again. "Mr. Goodwin tends to complicate matters. It is his profession." "I make a living," I said. "What's your excuse?" He considered that, then nodded as if I had made a reasonable point. "I make arrangements," he said. "Sometimes they intersect." "With coffins," I said. "Yes," he said. That was a gesture. "I appreciated the woodwork," I said. "It showed thought." "It was meant to," he said. "Thought is often undervalued." Mavis Calder shifted slightly, the envelope still in her hand. "I don't like this," she said. "You told me this would be a simple collection." "It is," he said. "The presence of Mr. Goodwin does not alter the nature of the transaction." It alters my interest, she said. He inclined his head again. Then your interest must adjust. I said, before anyone adjusts anything, I'd like to know what's in the envelope. He looked at me with something that might have been amusement. You will, he said. In due course. I'm not fond of due course, I said. It tends to arrive late. Patience, he said. You have until Friday. That seems to be a popular date, I said. It is, he said, for endings. Mavis took a step back as if the word had weight. I kept my eyes on Rane. You asked Miss Calder for access to records, I said. She declined, so you found another way. I find ways, he said. That is also a profession. And the coffin, I said. Part of the way. Part of the conversation, he said. You ask questions for a living, Mr. Goodwin. I asked you one. Who wants me buried before Friday? I said. Exactly, he said. I've got an answer, I said. You do. He shook his head slightly. Too simple, he said. If I wished you buried, I would not announce it with walnut and brass. I would arrange it with less ceremony and more certainty. That's reassuring, I said. What do you want, then? He leaned back, steepling his fingers in a gesture that would have annoyed Wolfe on principle. I want you to ask the correct question, he said. Why? I said. His eyes sharpened, just a fraction. Better, he said, but still incomplete. Complete it for me, I said. He smiled again, and this time there was something under it that didn't belong to politeness. No, he said. Discovery is more instructive than instruction. I was about to say something that would have improved neither of our moods when the outer door opened and footsteps sounded again. The young man's voice, uncertain now, and another voice, one I recognized because it had the flat patience of someone who had already decided what would happen next. Mr. Goodwin, Saul Panzer said from the doorway, you didn't tell me you were entertaining. Rane turned his head, not quickly, not slowly, just enough to include Saul in his field. The two men looked at each other for a second that had more content than most conversations. Mr. Panzer, Rane said, your reputation precedes you. I prefer to arrive first, Saul said. He came into the room and took a position that gave him a view of both of us and the door. He didn't sit. Then you are late, Rane said mildly. But not too late. Saul didn't answer that. He looked at the envelope in Mavis Calder's hand. That the package? It is, Rane said. Who's it for? Saul asked. Rane spread his hands slightly. A third party? Name, Saul said. Rane's smile didn't move. You will have it, he said, when the time is appropriate. Saul's eyes went to me, then back to Rane. I don't like appropriate, he said. It wastes time. Time is being spent regardless, Rane said. We may as well spend it intelligently. I said, let's try a different approach. You brought a coffin into my house. You arranged for me to see you. You want something from me. That's not a mystery. What is a mystery is why you think I'll give it to you. Rane considered me again, and this time there was no smile. Because you will want the same thing, he said. What's that? The truth, he said, about a matter you have already touched. Which matter? He nodded toward Mavis. Ask her, he said. She has already paid for part of it. Mavis's face tightened. I paid for silence, she said. And received it, Rane said. At a price. I said, you're talking about the letters. He inclined his head. Partly, he said. There were more than letters. Mavis looked at me, then at him. You said nothing about that, she said. I say only what is necessary, he said. The rest is discovered. Saul shifted his weight. We're not leaving without that envelope, he said. Rane looked at him. So you are free to attempt it, he said. But I would advise against it. It would be disruptive. Saul didn't move, but the air in the room changed. I'd seen him in worse situations, but not often. I said, 4 o'clock, because my watch said it was. Rane stood. Indeed, he said. Time. He held out his hand to Mavis. She hesitated, then gave him the envelope. He took it, weighed it as if it had a meaning beyond paper, and slipped it into his coat. Now, he said, we proceed to the next stage. And that is, I said. He looked at me over the thin frames of his glasses. You come with me, he said, or you let Friday arrive without understanding. I glanced at Saul. He gave me the smallest of nods. After you, I said. Rani opened the door, and I followed him out, and with Saul at my shoulder and the feeling that the coffin had finally stopped being a message and had become a map, and that I was now walking directly into the place it was pointing. We went down the stairs in a line that would have looked ordinary to anyone who didn't know better. Rani in front, unhurried, his shoulders relaxed, as if he were guiding guests to a table he had reserved in advance. I followed, close enough to see the faint crease at the back of his collar. Saul stayed just behind me, not crowding, not lagging, occupying the exact amount of space that made it clear he was part of the arrangement without conceding control of it. On the street, the air had cooled. Late afternoon was turning toward evening, and the city had decided to mind its own business. Rane didn't look back. He walked east, turned the corner, and went headed toward Lexington with the same measured pace. A cab slowed as if invited. He raised a hand, and it stopped. He opened the rear door and got in without waiting to see if we would follow. I got in beside him. Saul took the front seat. Where to? The driver asked. Rane gave an address on East 73rd. The cab moved. For a minute, none of us spoke. Rane took the envelope from his coat, rested it on his knee, and tapped it lightly with one finger as if checking for a pulse. You're not curious? He said to me. I am, I said. I just don't like to show it until it pays. He smiled faintly. It will, he said. Saul turned his head slightly. What's on 73rd? An office, Rane said. Whose? Saul asked. Mine, Rane said. That simplified one thing and complicated several others. You conduct business there? I said. I conduct several kinds of business, he said. Today, we will conduct one that concerns you. And the envelope? It concerns that as well, he said. The cab stopped in front of a narrow building that looked as if it had been designed to discourage attention. No brass plate, no name on the glass, just a door and a bell that had been polished by use. Rane paid the driver in cash. Exact fare, no tip, and we went in. The stairway was clean, the walls recently painted in a color that refused to commit itself. On the second floor, Rane took out a key and opened a door. Inside, the office was spare and precise. Desk, chairs, a filing cabinet, a safe. No photographs, no ornaments, nothing that would distract from purpose. It suited him. Sit, he said. We did. He took the chair behind the desk, placed the envelope in front of him, and folded his hands. Before we proceed, he said, I will make one thing clear. You are here by choice. That's generous, I said. You gave me a coffin to help me decide. I gave you an invitation, he said. You accepted. Saul said, talk. Rane inclined his head. Very well. Mr. Goodwin, you handled a matter for Miss Calder involving certain letters. You retrieved them, you ensured they did not reach a particular court, and you concluded the affair. That's right, I said. You did not conclude it, he said. You concluded a portion of it. There were additional documents, ledgers, records of transactions that extend beyond the letters. Those records did not come into your possession. Because they weren't part of the job, I said. They were part of the reality, he said. And that reality has consequences. Whose consequences? Saul asked. Rane looked at him. Several parties, he said. One of them is me. And the others, I said. Names are not yet useful, he said. What is useful is that those records are now missing. From where? I said. From a location that was considered secure, he said. A private archive maintained by a firm that specializes in discretion. Calder and Associates, I said. He shook his head. No, more discreet than that. Then why involve Calder at all? I said. Because she is connected to one of the parties, he said. And because she believed the matter was finished, it is not. I leaned forward. Let me guess. You want me to find the records. I want you to understand why you must, he said. Convince me, I said. He tapped the envelope again. This contains a copy of a single page from the missing records, he said. It is sufficient to demonstrate the nature of the transactions. It also contains a name. Whose? Saul said. Yours, Rane said, looking at me. I didn't move. I'm flattered, I said. But I don't remember doing business with you. You did not, he said. But your name appears as an intermediary in a transfer that occurred 2 weeks ago. That's impossible, I said. Is it? He said. You will find that the appearance of your name in such a context is inconvenient. Inconvenient is a mild word, Saul said. Indeed, Rane said. By Friday, that inconvenience will become public unless the full records are recovered and the context is established. And the coffin, I said. A reminder, he said, of what happens when reputations are buried. I let that sit. It had weight. You're blackmailing me, I said. He shook his head. No, he said. I'm presenting a problem and offering a path to its solution. The distinction is important. Not to me, I said. It will be, he said, when you consider the alternatives. Saul said, Why him? Because he is already involved, Rane said. Because he has access to Mr. Wolfe's mind, which I require, and because he will not ignore a threat that touches his own name. That last part is accurate, I said. Rane nodded. Then we are aligned. On one point, I said. We both want to know who put my name in your records. Precisely, he said. And why? I looked at Saul. He looked back. Then I looked at Rane. Suppose I refuse, I said. Rane's smile returned, thin as the frames of his glasses. Then Friday arrives, he said. And you will discover that a coffin is not the only thing that can be delivered. I let the silence sit long enough to make it work for me instead of him. Rane didn't rush it. He had the look of a man who had arranged his pieces and was willing to wait for the other side to notice the board. Show me, I said finally. He slid the envelope across the desk. I took it, opened it, and drew out a single sheet. It was a photocopy, clean, precise, with columns and figures that had the kind of order men prefer when they are hiding disorder. Halfway down, a line carried a name. Mine. Not just my name, but my full name, typed in the same elite face I had seen on the note, the same worn O betraying the machine. Next to it, a figure, large enough to interest a district attorney and small enough to be plausible if explained properly. Well, I said, that's imaginative. It is accurate, Rane said. It is not, I said. I don't move money I can't remember. Memory is not required for a record to exist, he said. Saul leaned in slightly. Where did this come from? A ledger, Rane said. One of several. The others are missing. And you think someone put his name there to make trouble, Saul said. I know it, Rane said. The question is who, and to what end. I looked at the sheet again. The date on the line was 2 weeks ago. The description column held a phrase that meant nothing by itself, and everything in the right context. Consulting facilitation. That's polite, I said. It is designed to be, Rane said. Ambiguity is useful until it is not. And Friday, I said. The party that will benefit from the exposure has arranged for the records to be delivered to a certain office, he said. On Friday, unless they are persuaded otherwise. Which office? Saul said. Rane shook his head. Not yet. I put the sheet back in the envelope and handed it to him. You're asking me to find records that have already been moved and identify a man who has already covered his trail in 2 days. I'm asking you to do what you are reputed to do, Rane said. With assistance. From you, I said. From me, he said. And from Mr. Wolfe, if he chooses to participate. He chooses, I said. I report. Then report that time is limited, Rane said, and that the cost of inaction is significant. Saul said, Why not go to the police? Rane's eyes shifted to him. Because the police would take the copy, ask questions, and proceed according to their own priorities, he said, which would not align with mine. Or yours. Maybe, Saul said. Maybe not. Certainty is rare, Rane said. Risk is not. I stood up. We're done here, I said. For now. Rane inclined his head. For now, he agreed. I will expect to hear from you this evening. You'll hear from Wolfe, I said, if he's interested. He will be, Rane said. He dislikes imprecision. That was true enough to be useful. Saul and I left. On the street the air had shifted again, and the city had decided to move. We walked a block before Saul spoke. You believe him? He said. I believe the paper exists, I said. I believe my name is on it. I believe someone wants it seen. That's enough to start. Rane, Saul said. I believe he's invested, I said. Not necessarily honest. Saul nodded. I'll keep on him. Do that, I said. And find out who runs private archives that specialize in discretion. There are a few, he said. I'll make a list. I headed for the car. As I drove back to the brownstone, I ran the list in my head. Calder, Bryce, Baird, Weiss, the assistant cashier, and now Rane, who had inserted himself with a confidence that suggested he knew the terrain. Somewhere in that list was a man who had decided to write my name into a ledger and send me a coffin to make sure I noticed. Wolfe was in the office when I got back. He had moved the list of names to the center of the desk, and beside it he had placed a new sheet with columns drawn in his neat hand. He looked at me. You have been instructed, he said. I have been invited, I said. He calls it a distinction. It is not, Wolfe said. But it is a preference for euphemism. I handed him the description. Not the paper itself. That was Rane's, but the contents. Wolfe listened without interruption, his eyes half closed, his fingers resting lightly on the desk. Your name, he said when I finished, placed with deliberation. Typed on the same machine that sent the coffin, I said. Elite face, worn O, heavy strike. Wolfe nodded. Consistency is either laziness or confidence. In this case, confidence. Or desire to be traced, I said. Perhaps, Wolfe said. But to what? That's your department, I said. It is, he agreed. We will proceed. How? I said. He opened his eyes fully. We will invert the problem, he said. Instead of asking who placed your name, we will ask who benefits from your name being there. Anyone who wants me discredited, I said. Too broad, Wolfe said. Narrow it. Someone connected to the ledger, I said. Someone who knows I handled the Calder matter. Someone who knows how to use a typewriter and prefers a certain style. Wolfe made a small sound that might have been approval. Better. Now add a constraint. He must also have access to a private archive and the capacity to remove records without immediate detection. That narrows it further, I said. But not enough. It will, Wolfe said, when we add one more element. He must also wish you to be aware of the threat. I considered that. So not a silent operator, I said. Not a man who prefers clean work. Correct, Wolfe said. He prefers to engage, to observe, to manipulate responses. Like Rane, I said. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. Yes, he said, like Mr. Rane. You think he's lying, I said. I think he is telling the truth in a manner that serves him, Wolfe said, which is not identical to honesty. That's comforting, I said. It should be instructive, Wolfe said. We will test him. How? I said. Wolfe looked at the list again, then at me. By assembling the parties, he said. Those connected to the Calder matter, those with access to the relevant archives, and Mr. Rane. We will observe their reactions in proximity. You want them here, I said. Of course, Wolfe said. Where else would I conduct an inquiry of consequence? And Friday, I said. Will not arrive unchallenged, Wolfe said. Call them, invite them, inform them that their presence is required tomorrow evening. If they decline, they will be compelled by other means. That's a promise, I said. It is a plan, Wolfe said. Now, execute it. I went to the phone. As I dialed the first number, I had the sense that the coffin had done its job. It had brought the right people into motion, and now Wolfe intended to bring them into a room where motion becomes visible and lies have less space to hide. Friday was still coming, but it was going to have company. I made the calls in a row, keeping my tone steady and my patience shorter than usual. Leland Bryce answered first, sounding as if he had been expecting a summons and resenting it in advance. He agreed to come with the enthusiasm of a man accepting a tax audit. Baird took longer, asked more questions, and agreed when I stopped answering them. Weiss refused, then reconsidered when I mentioned that his refusal would be noted in a context he might not enjoy. Mavis Calder said she would attend. Her voice composed again, but thinner. Victor Rain did not need to be called. He called me. I assume Mr. Wolfe has decided to participate, he said. He has decided to host, I said. Tomorrow evening. I will be there, he said, punctually. Bring your envelope, I said. I will bring what is necessary, he said, and hung up. By the time I finished, the list on Wolfe's desk had become a roster. Fritz was informed, objected, and then began planning a dinner that would demonstrate civilization in the face of intrusion. Saul checked in twice, once to say he had identified 3 firms that maintained private archives for clients who preferred not to have their affairs noticed, and once to say that one of those firms, Harrington and Kells, had reported a discrete irregularity 2 days ago. A cabinet opened, a ledger missing, and no signs of forced entry. Names? I asked. Clients? Saul said. Not yet, but one of the partners wears a signet ring on the right hand. That's not enough, I said. It's something, he said. It always is, I said, and told him to be at the brownstone the next evening. Wolfe listened to Saul's reports without comment, then retired early, which meant he intended to be at his best when the room filled. I went to bed later, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I preferred to let the problem settle into the shape it wanted. It did that around 2 a.m, when I woke up with the image of the ledger line in my head and the pressure marks on the capitals. Deliberate. Heavy on the first letter. A habit of emphasis. A man who liked to begin with force. In the morning, and the house resumed its normal pattern as if nothing had happened, which was its way of preparing for something to happen. Wolfe tended his orchids. Fritz prepared lunch. I reviewed the list again and added one more name, not because I was sure of it, but because I disliked omissions. Then I went over to Harrington and Kells. They occupied a building that had no reason to be there, except that it had always been there. The lobby was discreet, the receptionist more so. I asked for Mr. Harrington and was told he was unavailable. I asked for Mr. Kells and was told the same. I said I would wait. After 10 minutes, a man came out who was neither Harrington nor Kells, but had the look of someone authorized to deny things politely. "I'm Foster," he said. "How may I help you?" "You can tell me about the ledger that went missing 2 days ago," I said, but his expression didn't change enough. "We don't discuss internal matters," he said. "I don't discuss coffins either," I said. "But one was delivered to my house yesterday with my name on a page that came from your missing ledger. That makes it less internal." That moved him. "Not much, but enough." "I'm not aware of any such connection," he said. "You will be," I said. "Tonight at 7 at Mr. Wolfe's residence. You can attend and explain how your internal matters have become external, or you can decline and have them explained for you." He considered. "I will inform Mr. Harrington," he said. "Do that," I said, and left. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office, the chairs arranged with a precision that suggested he had already decided where each person would sit. He looked at me. "Harrington and Kells," I said. "Ledger missing, and partner with a signet ring on the right hand. They'll send someone." "Good," Wolfe said. The circle tightens. "Or we've invited the wrong people to dinner," I said. "Then we will discover that," Wolfe said. "Discovery is the purpose." The afternoon passed with a kind of quiet that had weight. At 6:30, Fritz announced that dinner would be served at 8 and that any interruptions before then would be tolerated but not forgiven. At 6:50, the bell rang. I opened the door. Leland Bryce stood there, hat in hand, his expression already defensive. I took his coat and showed him into the office. He looked at the chairs, chose one that put his back to the wall, and sat as if it were a position he intended to hold. At 6:55, Baird arrived, his eyes sharp, his mouth thin. He took in Bryce, nodded without warmth, and chose a chair that gave him a view of the door. Weiss came next, reluctant and curious, followed by Mavis Calder, composed again, her eyes moving quickly over the room. At 7, Saul was already in place, standing near the window, occupying space without claiming it. At 7:03, a man entered who introduced himself as Foster from Harrington and Kells. He wore a ring on his right hand. The stone was dark. At 7:05, Victor Rain arrived. He came in last, as if he had arranged it that way, and took his place without being asked. The envelope was in his coat. I closed the door. The room held its breath. Wolfe cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, Miss Calder," he said, "you have been summoned because a matter of some complexity has intruded upon my household and my patients. It involves a ledger, a false entry, a threatened exposure, and a coffin. Mr. Goodwin has been the recipient of the latter two. I intend to determine the authorship of the former and the intention behind all." He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze resting for a fraction longer on Rane. "You will answer my questions," he said. "You will do so truthfully. You will not interrupt unless invited. If you fail in any of these, I will conclude that you prefer the consequences of silence to the advantages of cooperation." He leaned back slightly. "Mr. Rane," he said, "you will begin." Rane did not shift in his chair. He placed the envelope on his knee as he had done before, and regarded Wolfe with the same composed attention he had shown everywhere else, as if rooms adjusted themselves to him rather than the other way round. "I've already explained my position," he said. "I discovered a discrepancy in a set of records. I identified Mr. Goodwin's name within them. I concluded that he would have an interest in resolving the matter before it became public." Wolfe inclined his head slightly. "You concluded many things, Mr. Rane. Some of them may even be true, but you have not explained your method." "My method?" Rane said. "The coffin," Wolfe said. "The surveillance. The choice of intermediaries. The theatricality. You wish to be noticed." Rane's mouth curved faintly. "I wish to ensure engagement." "And you achieved it," Wolfe said. But you also revealed something else. You revealed that you are not the originator of the false entry. That moved him. Not much, but enough. On what basis? He asked. On the basis of style, Wolfe said. The typed note, the address slip, and the ledger entry share a machine. Elite typeface, worn O. Heavy initial strikes, a single instrument used consistently. You wish us to believe that you merely discovered the entry, yet you employ the same machine to communicate. That is not discovery. That is participation. Rani's eyes sharpened. Coincidence, he said. No, Wolfe said. Convenience. You have access to the machine. Therefore, you have access to the ledger before it was removed. A murmur moved through the room. Foster from Harrington and Kells shifted in his chair, his hand moving unconsciously to the ring on his finger. Wolfe's gaze turned to him. Mr. Foster, he said, you represent a firm that maintains private archives. You have reported a missing ledger. You wear a signet ring on your right hand. That is not illegal, but it is unusual. It is also distinctive. Foster stiffened. Are you suggesting— I'm stating, Wolfe said, that the ledger was not stolen by an outsider. It was removed by someone with access, someone within your firm. Foster's lips tightened. That is absurd. Is it? Wolfe said. Then explain why the ledger entry naming Mr. Goodwin was typed on a machine that is also used to produce communications connected to Mr. Rain. Explain why the removal occurred without signs of forced entry. Explain why Mr. Rainey knew of the missing records before your firm announced the irregularity. Foster said nothing. Wolfe turned back to Rane. You and Mr. Foster are connected, he said. Whether as partners or as adversaries is immaterial. You share access, you share knowledge, but you do not share purpose. Rane's composure held, but it had become an effort. Yes, and what is my purpose? He asked. To force the exposure of a transaction, Wolfe said. One that implicates others more severely than Mr. Goodwin. You placed his name in the ledger to create a lever. A respected name, suddenly suspect, draws attention. Attention leads to inquiry. Inquiry reveals the rest. I said, you used me as bait. Rane looked at me. As a catalyst, he said. Wolfe raised a hand. Terminology is irrelevant. The effect is the same. However, your plan contains a flaw. Rane's eyes flicked back to Wolfe. Which is? You assumed that Mr. Goodwin would react without guidance, Wolfe said. That he would attempt to resolve the matter alone, perhaps even conceal it. Instead, he brought it to me. That alters the outcome. And how? Rane said. By removing your control, Wolfe said. You wish to direct the inquiry, because you wish to decide when and how the full ledger would be revealed. You no longer have that privilege. Rane's smile returned, but it was thinner now. Do I not? He said. The records are still missing. The delivery is still scheduled. Friday remains. Friday will not arrive as you intend, Wolfe said. He turned to Saul. Mr. Panzer. Saul stepped forward. Harrington and Kells has a secondary archive, he said. Not on their books. It's maintained off-site, accessible only to senior partners. I visited it this afternoon. Foster's face went pale. The missing ledgers aren't missing, Saul said. They've been duplicated. Originals still in place. Copies removed. Wolfe nodded. Thank you. Mr. Foster, your firm's discretion is not as absolute as you believed. The records exist. They can be produced. Foster swallowed. You have no right— I have no need, Wolfe said. Mr. Goodwin's name will not be exposed without context. The context is now available. Rane leaned forward. You cannot control what others do with information, he said. No, Wolfe said. But I can control what information is presented, and to whom. You intended to release a fragment. We will release the whole. Silence fell. It had weight, but it had direction now. Rane sat back slowly. For the first time, he looked not composed, but thoughtful in a way that suggested recalculation. "You have changed the balance," he said. "I have corrected it," Wolfe said. Rane considered that, then nodded once. "Perhaps," he said. He reached into his coat, took out the envelope, and placed it on Wolfe's desk. "Then we proceed differently," he said. "I will not oppose a full disclosure." "That is wise," Wolfe said. Rane stood. "I was not your enemy, Mr. Goodwin," he said. "Merely your instigator." "I prefer my instigators less creative," I said. He inclined his head. "A matter of taste." He turned and left. Foster followed, less composed, his hand still touching the ring as if it might offer guidance. One by one, the others rose and departed, each carrying away a piece of the tension and leaving behind the outline of what had been revealed. When the door closed, the room settled. I looked at Wolfe. "You were right," I said. "He didn't want me buried." "No," Wolfe said. "He wanted you visible." "And now you are," Wolfe said. "But not as he intended." Fritz appeared in the doorway, his expression firm. "Dinner," he said. Wolfe nodded. "At last." We moved to the dining room. The table was set, the food prepared with the care of a man defending civilization against intrusion. Wolfe took his place, unfolded his napkin, and regarded his plate with approval. "Archie," he said. "Yes, sir." Men who employ coffins as instruments of persuasion misunderstand both death and persuasion. They assume finality where there is only transition. "That's comforting," I said. "It is instructive," Wolfe said. "One should always prefer clarity to drama." I picked up my fork. "I'll remember that the next time someone sends me furniture." He grunted. Dinner proceeded, and the brownstone returned to its proper rhythm, as if the disturbance had been absorbed and resolved. Outside, the city continued its business, unaware that Friday had been deprived of its intended spectacle. Later, as I sat with a final cup of coffee, and I thought about the coffin in the front room, empty except for its message. It had done its job, but not in the way its sender had planned. It had brought us to the question that mattered, and Wolfe had answered it in the only way he ever did, by making the truth less convenient for everyone except himself. I finished my coffee and went to have the coffin removed.